Next up, please welcome Kerry Gallivan, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Chimani, Jack Kelly, Digital and Social Marketing Manager for Subaru of America, and Brandon Miller, Group Media Director for Carmichael Lynch.
Hi everybody, how are you doing today? Good? Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come speak to you about some of the work we've been doing. We're excited to share it, and we're going to walk you through, one, the message that we're trying to commute from a Subaru perspective. Brandon's going to walk through how we distributed that message, and Kerry's going to walk through a really tangible example of how we've really distributed that message so you can see how it really functions. So just starting off here, we get pegged as the love brand a lot because it's been a long-running campaign that we've been leveraging for a very long time. And we really feel like very supportive of the campaign and a continuation on doing the campaign, specifically because it's what customers ask for. Customers ask for it in kind of a different way than just raising their hand and said, hey, can you do a campaign on this? Right? Nobody really does that. So we saw it in research. We saw it in the way that people would write us Dear Subaru letters, like, hey, I love your product. I was in an accident. It saved my life. Hey, I had this car since grad school, and when I had kids, I was still able to give it down to my kids, which is a very long time. And it's great to see that we're able to provide really strong product, but put a really strong and integrated message behind it. And that message really emulates itself not just in the TV spots with this little girl in the top left-hand corner, but also in our sales event. Like, most vehicle manufacturers don't do a sales event where you don't give money back to the customer. We do $250 donated to a charity of their choice. So we feel like that's really different and really sort of supports that idea of why you love Subaru and wanting to continue to do that, and we try and emulate that everywhere, particularly in our factory here in the United States, which we call the SIA plant, which produces about 50% of our vehicles for the US market. We realized as a company that we were getting a lot of parts, a lot of vehicles from Japan, even though they're built here in the US, and that produced a lot of waste. So the containers that house the engines were styrofoam. There was wrapping on the vehicles that were plastic, and that would all just get thrown away. Well, 10 years ago, the team at SIA really decided to embrace what we were doing on the marketing side and say, how can we become less wasteful? How can we recycle and reuse a lot of what we're doing? So we really feel strongly as a whole company that it's a very integrated idea, and we keep doing it, and we want to present that to our customers. And it's been really successful. You guys have seen some of the headlines, and this isn't sort of a braggadocious way of just throwing that out there today, but really just to say it's working for us, and we feel like it's a really good opportunity not only to sell a lot of vehicles, but we sell them with very low incentives on the market, so that's a more profitable way to sell them, which really allows us to go back and do a lot of the things that we've been doing. And one of the newer campaigns or new iterations of what we're doing is really based around this idea of the love promise. So it's taking all the things that you know about Subaru. Subaru loves pets. Subaru is a very environmentally friendly company. Subaru loves learning, like all these commitments we do through events and through the campaigns that we have. Subaru loves the help, which is more about general philanthropic events. And then Subaru loves the care, which is really sort of tied into just helping people sort of in a more community type of way. So what we're going to talk to you guys about today was specifically Subaru Loves the Earth, and that's a campaign that we've been working on with the national parks. So we started looking at what we had done in the SIA plant that we just spoke about in terms of recycling and reusing, and we started to identify that the national parks, while they weren't manufacturing anything, they have a lot of people coming into the parks. And when those people come into the parks, a lot of times they don't know the language, right? They could be from a myriad of different countries, so they don't know how to recycle things, right? Because everything's written in English. They might bring plastic water bottles just because they're taking a flight over or they're they're traveling to get here. So it's just easier for them to do that. But what that generates is a lot of waste. And it's not the fault of the parks. It's not really a fault of the consumers, because that's just the nature of going and visiting these wonderful parks. But it is a concern for us. So we've been working with them to say, as a total group for the parks, you have around 100 million pounds of garbage going to a landfill every year. Is there something that we could do to partner with you and help you? And Subaru's helped over 100 companies become more environmentally friendly, and specifically coach them on zero landfill. And that's something we're trying to do with the national parks. They just had a centennial that came up, which is what started a lot of this campaign. And Brandon, Kerry, and I have been working really closely to bring this out. So it's a baby steps problem. We're not going to eliminate all 100 million pounds of garbage from the landfills immediately. So we start with 3 different parks, 3 well-known parks, so Yosemite, Grand Teton, and Denali. And we're going to baby step our way through sort of understanding what their challenges are, not just from a recycling perspective, but an infrastructure perspective. If you look at Grand Teton and Denali, there's not a lot of places to take the material to even be recycled. So how do you figure out some like real infrastructure problems? So how can Subaru help from a manufacturing standpoint, and how can we help educate consumers in general on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and ultimately keep them sort of invested in Subaru and brand likability. So I'll pass it to Brandon.
And so I'll start off by saying, when we heard about this opportunity and what Subaru was doing and the way that they were like putting their money where their mouths were when it came to sustainability in the park, something that they care about fundamentally anyway, it was super, super exciting for us, because of course the challenge that comes to the media agency is, okay, well, how do we tell people about what we're doing? And what an exciting opportunity for us to do media in a way that's a little bit different than, we're launching a product, we've got some new functionality. It's literally about, this is something that the brand cares about, they really care about it, and they're really invested in it. So, taking a half step back, one of the things that's been so exciting for me about working in media on the Subaru brand has been that this love campaign that we've developed together, has really sort of infused its way into all of the different processes in making advertising happen. So it's not just the campaign itself, it's even infused its way into how we go about doing media. And so, there's 2 real audiences that I like to think about with respect to this love concept. The first is the people that are seeing the message. Like, we're talking about engage, and I think oftentimes, or sometimes anyway, media discussions can get too, what's my cost per, what's the efficacy, to the point that Mark was making earlier. And we lose sight of the fact that attention is really a sacred thing. Every one of us only has so much time on the planet. That's a little grim of a thought, but it's really an important thing to us. And so as we're building media plans, particularly with concepts like this, we really got to respect people and respect that moment of attention and do something cool with it. Secondarily, we bring this premise to how we interact with our media partners, like Kerry and Chimani. We don't believe that media partners should be treated as, we're going to try to, fair rates for media inventory is critical. We all get that. But our goal is never to squeeze an extra 5% off of the bottom. Our goal is to work together to find areas that Subaru, the brand, is passionate about, and make those connections with our media partners. And I think we've done it pretty well in this case. And so the last thing I'll do before I kind of get into what we did for the national parks and this media campaign is I love this slide. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about me than I probably should. I grew up on a farm about 2 hours west of Minneapolis. And so, growing up, I knew pretty quickly what a commodity is and what those dynamics of a commodity are. A soybean in Brazil is the same as a soybean in Minneapolis, and those that'll affect markets. And we understand that a soybean is a soybean is a soybean. Human attention is not that way. And when we start to look at impressions in terms of here, what's the CPM and what's our cost per click, without providing the proper context underneath it, in terms of what are we actually talking about doing, it really grossly oversimplifies people into almost a state of commodity. And I think that's a mistake that I think a lot of brands have kind of fallen into in this age of programmatic efficiency. So as we kind of get into this, into the campaign, you might think, as you'd guess, we made some TV ads, we made some digital video, we had a social effort behind it. But it was almost like cheating, right? So we're talking about doing good in the national parks, and frankly, you take an image like this and you blow it up and throw it outside of the building here, it's going to get attention. So we thought we would kind of take it one step further. And so what we challenged all of our media partners to do was, you guys need to get on board with what we're trying to do. We're trying to decrease the amount of trash that visitors are bringing to parks. It's not enough for us to say, hey, here's a banner ad, here's a video, run it. We need you to become invested in what we're doing. And as Kerry will get into, I mean, they're a perfect fit, but there are a number of companies that we got on board with this initiative, and that was really the goal. So, this is kind of a question that we sort of circled around a lot on, putting this together. How do you measure success of something like this? There's reach metrics and favorability and studies and all that kind of stuff, and that's all great. And we, of course, have benchmarks against that, but it's certainly not dealer locates. It's certainly not, we were doing work in Yosemite. The Subaru dealer outside of Yosemite isn't going to see a flood of foot traffic because of this thing to sell a bunch of extra cars. So we came up with this approach of the KPI is zero, zero trash. So, okay, funny. But that actually is kind of a difficult thing for us collectively to agree on and set as our benchmark of moving forward. Like, the goal, that's the clear goal. And that's how all of our partners were evaluated on whether we were going to work with them or not. Secondarily was, what's our rate, what's our efficacy, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, we'll show a little video here to kind of run through some of the things we did.
Each year, visitors to national parks send over 100 million pounds of trash to landfills. So when Subaru signed on to sponsor the National Park Centennial, they decided to do more than write a check. Over 10 years ago, Subaru built the first zero-landfill automotive plant, so they offered to put their expertise to work, making the park's zero landfill too. Most media plans start at the top of the funnel, building broad awareness. But we worked backwards, focusing on that pivotal moment where a visitor and that visitor's trash enters the park. That was the best hope of changing behavior now and for generations to come. We partnered with Chimani to launch 59 new mobile apps to replace the paper visitor guide in each national park. This offered a prime opportunity to deliver tips on diverting the waste stream aimed at our parks. Then we worked backwards to reach people throughout the process of planning a park visit. We intercept you when you're thinking about what to pack, thanks to partnerships with Backpacker and Amazon. We made sustainable purchases easy and helped equip park visitors with over $350,000 worth of Earth-friendly gear. Partnerships with Weather.com and TripAdvisor keep our message front and center for people planning a trip. This drove over 1.3 million views to a website dedicated to keeping waste out of parks. Getting further away from setting foot in a park, we focused our attention on moments of inspiration, both to visit parks and to protect them, through partnerships with National Geographic and the IMAX film National Parks Adventure. This first public-private collaboration of its kind led to a direct conversation with Secretary of the Interior Sally Jewell about our Zero Landfill initiative. We also reached key influencers on Capitol Hill through our partnership with the Environmental Film Festival, with long-form trailers at the beginning of over 100 films, reaching 20,000 environmental stewards. Finally, we brought parks and sustainability messaging into the classroom through an education partnership with National Geographic and allowed fourth graders to become our most valued sources of change for the next 100 years. Curriculum pages have been viewed over 400,000 times, pushing the ultimate reach of kids well into the millions. We aren't going to tell you that this helps Subaru sell more cars. We're well on our way to achieving something even better, a national park system we can all enjoy for generations to come.
And so that last line is always something that I think we always kind of struggle with and come to loggerheads around. Like, we're not going to tell you that we sold more cars. That's a tough meeting the first go around. But I think as we've seen some of the successes of the brand over the course of the last 7 years, I think in some ways the proof is in the pudding, and consumers will reward you when you do these kinds of activities. I was going to talk a little bit more about some of the partnerships. I mean, in the interest of time, I'll pass it to Kerry in a second. But like, we worked with Amazon to build an entirely new way to shop, as you saw in the video, and it really involved getting beyond sort of the first wave of the sales team and getting them to become almost extensions of our own Subaru team within their organization. So, our sales crew is working with Amazon to find the right people in their retail team, in the product team, to build zero landfill products, and that's something that no one had ever even thought of creating in terms of their shopping process, and we just kind of made it because that was because our goal was zero, and because of that, it allowed us the opportunity to do some pretty cool things, including work with Kerry at Chimani.
Great. Thanks, Brendan. Excellent. So there are 300 million visitors to national parks from around the world visiting our parks here in the US. And the majority of those visitors these days want to use their mobile device when they go there. But they encounter two fundamental problems when they get there. Essentially, there's a lack of information, both from the Park Service as well as just the general services around the park, and there's a lack of connectivity. So when you have no signal and you want to use your mobile device, it becomes a real problem. And that's where Chimani has stepped in, where essentially what we're doing is we're reinventing the travel book experience on mobile. So we love the national parks, and we love what we do at Chimani. And so we thought, what better way to take the love story, but to embed it within the Chimani experience. And so the first thing that we did in thinking about this campaign is we created a native integration, something that flowed naturally within the user experience. It was front and center, where every visitor who was downloading our app and beginning to use it to plan their trip. Now, what was important about that is that we created opportunities for them to be educated about their own waste reduction, but more importantly, to start to make actions, both before they even left their home, as well as while they were actually experiencing these parks. Secondly, we said, well, let's set a goal. There are 59 amazing places in the United States, and those are our 59 national parks. Let's create a guide, an individual mobile app for each one of these 59 national parks. And that was the goal that we set as part of this campaign to allow that. So what's unique about the Chimani experience is it comes down to a fundamental issue. We're solving a real critical problem for people going to national parks right now. And we do that by creating a seamless stream from the beginning, before they actually leave their house and begin the planning process, and they're able to get these moments of education around waste reduction, to when they actually get to the parks and they have no connectivity, and they're still able to allow influence on their behavior as they're enjoying these experiences, to that point where they're actually begin to share those experiences when they get back home. Now, this has created an incredibly loyal audience that we've created with our apps. So much so that our average session length is about 10 minutes long. And we have a user retention rate of over 42%, which I'm proud to say is even better than Facebook's. So with this incredibly loyal community of users, this is a perfect opportunity to take the campaign that we worked with in Subaru and provide an educational moment for all of these visitors, both before and during, to try and reduce that goal of waste reduction. So we're a small company, small startup based up in Maine. The partnership with Subaru was both, I think, an investment in our future, as well as an investment in the future of the National Park Service. So it was a perfect synergy to take the goals of their campaign and a platform that we've created to really drive the movement.
Yeah, and I think it's so great that, you know, we've heard from you a number of times that as a result of this movement to paperless, a number of the parks have stopped offering paper guides altogether. And so when you talk about a goal of, you know, the KPI equals 0, that's tangible. That's a meaningful movement towards getting trash out of the parks, frankly. And, you know, that was really our goal with any partnership that we put together.
Yeah, it's the KPI equals 0 is funny because when we first talked to the executives, they were like, well, your salary equals 0. How's that going to feel for you? So, but I think in working with them, really having the sales success really does help us, right? But I think what, you know, looking back on this, what we're most proud of is really just the integration, not just between a brand, an agency, and a partner, but is really like even the inner workings of everything going on is really like a back to basics idea of saying, instead of chasing the shiny object to say, oh, I heard of this Chimani app and I've used it twice, we should definitely use that. It's what are we rooted from in terms of a strategy, right? The love campaign, how do you continue to make that fresh and interesting for people as it gets older and older? How do we take the really great work we're doing from a manufacturing perspective, from a sales perspective, from a campaign perspective, and how do you wrap that up into something that people are going to sort of understand and really sort of appreciate at the end of the day? And I think we were able to do that. So thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you.